In the heart of Yola, under the heavy silver glow of a moon that seemed almost too close to the earth, the Bellow house lay in a deep, expectant stillness. Moonlight poured through the narrow wooden slats of the window, painting long, pale stripes across the mud walls and the patterned floor mats. Safia lay on her side, face pressed lightly into her pillow, eyes squeezed shut, yet every muscle in her body betrayed the tension that hummed beneath her calm facade. Her patterned wrapper and headscarf caught tiny glimmers of moonlight, creating a mosaic of shadows that danced along her skin. On the other side of the bed, Ibrahim sat upright, knees drawn slightly in, fingers gripping the edge of his phone, pretending to scroll but stealing glances at her through the corner of his eye. The ceiling fan creaked slowly above them, casting spinning shadows across the room like silent sentinels. There was a heaviness in the air, almost as if the house itself were holding its breath, waiting for something, unseen, inevitable, to happen. Outside, the wind whispered through the cracks in the walls, stirring the thin curtains like a soft warning. Every heartbeat in that room seemed magnified, every exhale carried the weight of unspoken words and simmering pride. The tension was alive, almost a third presence, lurking in the corners, waiting for the smallest spark to ignite. On the bedside table, the small jar of expensive body cream glimmered under the moonlight, its lid catching a faint reflection that seemed almost like a signal. Safia's hand rested lightly on it, fingers clutching it as if the world depended on this tiny object. Ibrahim's shadow stretched long across the room, shoulders taut, jaw clenched, and eyes sharp with quiet frustration. The air seemed to thrum with a strange energy, faint mist curling along the floor as if stirred by the tension itself. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes, creating a rhythm that echoed the silent battle inside. Every small sound, the creak of the bed, the faint rustle of fabric, even the soft inhale of Safia, felt exaggerated, like it carried secret messages meant only for them. In that moment, the body cream was no longer just a jar, it was a symbol, a seed of pride, a spark for a storm that neither could fully comprehend. Shadows danced unnaturally, flickering across their faces as if the night itself were observing and judging the fragile peace between them. Something was about to break, but no one yet knew what form the fracture would take. As the first light of dawn struggled through thick clouds, spilling feeble golden fingers across the compound, the Bellow house seemed suspended in a strange liminality. Safia moved with careful grace, broom sweeping the dust in long, deliberate arcs, her eyes focused but mind tangled in thoughts of pride and stubbornness. Ibrahim sat on a chair stiffly, the morning light cutting across his face, highlighting the tight lines around his eyes, the subtle curl of his lips that refused any sign of compromise. Between them, Aisha stood with arms lifted slightly, exasperation and helplessness evident on her young face, attempting to mediate an invisible war neither adult was willing to name. The ceiling fan spun unevenly, catching strands of light and throwing elongated shadows across the walls, as if tracing an invisible boundary that neither husband nor wife would cross. Even the faint smoke rising from the kitchen seemed to hesitate, curling like questioning fingers in the morning air. Every object, the clay pots, woven mats, and small utensils, stood witness to the invisible yet palpable tension, holding echoes of conversations that would never happen, glances that lingered too long, and silences that spoke louder than words. This was a household suspended between ordinary life and the gathering storm of pride, a calm that foretold an approaching chaos. The village of Yola stretched along the riverbanks like a painting brought to life. Thatched roofs glowed faintly in the soft embrace of the rising sun, clay walls bearing the marks of generations who had molded them with care. Women carried water pots balanced gracefully on their heads, their colorful wrappers swaying rhythmically, while children darted along narrow pathways, laughing and squealing as they played by the river's edge. Smoke spiraled gently from the clay stoves, carrying the scent of ground millet, spices, and slow-cooked stews, filling the morning with familiar warmth. Safia and Ibrahim moved through the village in their traditional attire, Safia's patterned wrapper flowing around her legs, Ibrahim's crisp tunic catching light as he adjusted the folds. Their expressions were calm, almost serene, yet observant, subtle hints of distance lingered in their eyes, betraying the undercurrent of tension that hovered around them. The elders gathered under mango trees, their faces lined with wisdom, sharing tales of spirits and moral lessons, reminding all who would listen that stubborn hearts could invoke consequences unseen. The village thrummed with life and culture, yet beneath the beauty of routine, shadows lingered, portents that hinted at the trials the couple would soon face, and at the invisible forces quietly stirring in the land. Inside the Bellow house, the air was thick with the fragrant aroma of tumo shikafa, steam rising in lazy spirals from the clay stove. Safia moved gracefully, hands skillfully stirring, lifting pots with precision learned from years of practice. Ibrahim sat near the doorway, pretending to read a rolled parchment, but his gaze flickered constantly toward her, the smallest movements betraying the tight coil of pride and irritation within him. Shadows from the flickering firelight stretched across the walls, caressing the colorful fabrics and carved masks that adorned the home, accentuating the invisible battle between calm and conflict. Aisha leaned against the doorframe, exasperation painted across her youthful face, murmuring in attempts to mediate, though her words were often ignored. Each clatter of a utensil, each sizzle from the pot, seemed magnified, echoing in the silence that neither adult dared break. Every detail, from the texture of the woven mats underfoot to the rhythmic creak of the ceiling fan above, conspired to keep the tension taut, filling the room with a charged atmosphere, pregnant with anticipation of inevitable confrontation. Ibrahim inhaled deeply, the aroma of the stew curling into his senses, both tantalizing and infuriating. His stomach growled subtly, a silent testament to the primal need he refused to acknowledge, while Safia glided past him, hair flicking back with a proud, deliberate motion. Her eyes were bright, yet defiant, a silent challenge to the boundaries they had set for each other. The flickering firelight carved shadows across their faces, highlighting the stubborn lines of pride, the glimmer of withheld apologies, and the unspoken battle that neither would yield. Outside, a lone crow perched atop the roof, tilting its head as if observing the household with foreboding intelligence. The room seemed to hold its breath, every small sound, the crackle of fire, the swish of a wrapper, the creak of a floorboard, contributing to a tension that seemed almost alive, hinting that ordinary routines were teetering on the edge of something extraordinary. Night descended like a velvet curtain over the village, and a soft fog crept through the narrow alleys, curling along rooftops and snaking into the Bellow compound. Safia slept uneasily, tossing slightly under the thin blanket, eyes flicking beneath lids as if dreaming of silent battles. Around her bed, faint glowing symbols shimmered on the floor, pale gold and blue, twisting like whispers in a language she could not understand. The air felt thicker, humming with unseen energy that pressed against the walls and ceiling. Ibrahim lay back to back with her, unaware of the glimmering warnings, tension coiled in every muscle as he feigned sleep. Aisha peeked through the doorway, eyes wide and reflecting the soft light of the strange symbols, a mix of awe and fear painting her youthful face. Shadows on the walls bent unnaturally, stretching and twisting, forming ephemeral shapes that seemed almost alive. The night whispered promises of revelation, of consequences to come, and of lessons written in the glow of ancient forces neither of them had yet acknowledged. In the courtyard, the ordinary became extraordinary. A sudden gust of wind, yet no cloud passed, lifted utensils from the clay tables, swaying them mid-air like puppets on invisible strings. Safia stood frozen, wrapper caught in the breeze, eyes wide with disbelief, feeling the weight of forces she had never seen but somehow knew. Ibrahim's posture stiffened instantly, every muscle taut, a cocktail of confusion, fear, and reluctant awe. The moon fought through fast-moving clouds, casting flickering light across the scene, elongating shadows that seemed to twist toward them. Whispers, faint but insistent, rose from the walls, forming shapes of words almost recognizable, as if the house itself were speaking a warning. The air felt alive, electric with a force that was moral, supernatural, and intimate all at once. Each object's erratic motion reflected the invisible currents of tension between pride, stubbornness, and unseen judgment. In that moment, the world outside the ordinary opened, revealing the thin veil between human disputes and the realm of the spirits. As twilight fell, painting the sky in bruised purples and deep oranges, the village elder Malamogo appeared outside the Bellow house, a figure of authority and wisdom etched in every line of his weathered face. His hands rose in a measured warning, robe catching the last light of the sun and flickering with each movement. Safia and Ibrahim emerged from the doorway, wary and tense, eyes scanning the elder for meaning. Mist swirled around their feet, carrying with it faint scents of earth, smoke, and the invisible weight of judgment. Shadows from unseen shapes stretched long toward the house, reaching hungrily as if anticipating a reckoning. The air vibrated with the moral weight of choices made in silence, pride clashing with humility, and a warning of consequences that would not wait. Even the simplest gestures, a flick of a hand, a lowered gaze, were amplified in the charged atmosphere, carrying echoes of both fear and the hope of salvation. Inside the dimly lit room, Safia collapsed, her body folding softly onto the mat. Aisha rushed to her side, arms trembling, eyes wide, a silent scream frozen on her face as she took in the frailty of her friend. Ibrahim burst in moments later, panic etched deep into his features, chest heaving, eyes wide with both guilt and desperation. The moonlight filtered through narrow windows, casting eerie, angular patterns across the walls, floor, and their faces. The subtle presence of tubes, small glass bottles, and medical-like implements hinted at the unseen consequences of pride, anger, and prolonged silent battles, blending the ordinary and supernatural in a tense tableau. Every sound, the shuffle of feet, the quiet groan of the collapsing mat, the whisper of breath, amplified the stakes, drawing them into the moral and emotional consequences of their stubbornness. The night erupted into chaos as flames leapt hungrily across the Bello compound, painting the walls in flickering reds and oranges, and sending clouds of black smoke spiraling into the stormy sky above. Safia stood outside, her hair whipped by the wind, patterned wrapper clinging to her in the heat, eyes wide with terror, a mix of shock and helplessness. Ibrahim, covered in ash and soot, knelt desperately near the burning remnants of their home, reaching futilely toward scattered belongings, his face a raw map of panic, guilt, and regret. The firelight danced across the faces of villagers gathered at a safe distance, eyes reflecting a spectrum of fear, awe, and sorrow as they watched the collapse of what had been ordinary domestic life. Sparks swirled through the air like tiny, fiery messengers, each one a reminder of their prior silent battles, pride-fueled arguments, and the tension that had been ignored for too long. The acrid smell of smoke mingled with the earthy scent of the night, filling the air with a physical, almost tangible presence of consequence. Every roar of the fire, every crack of burning wood, echoed like a drumbeat of moral reckoning, forcing both Safia and Ibrahim to confront the true cost of their stubbornness. Later, in the sterile quiet of a dimly lit hospital corridor, Ibrahim sat beside Safia's bed, hands clasped tightly, knuckles white, eyes brimming with unshed tears. The soft hum of medical equipment punctuated the silence, each beep a reminder of fragility and second chances. Safia, weak but alert, met his gaze, faintly smiling through the exhaustion and pain, her eyes carrying a mix of forgiveness, understanding, and quiet wisdom. Shadows stretched long across the room, cast by the dim overhead lights and a small lamp beside her bed, accentuating vulnerability and emotional gravity. In the background, Aisha stood silently, watching with hope, relief, and reverent awe, understanding that the moment was bigger than pride, it was the fragile rebirth of connection and trust. Every breath, every subtle movement, was laden with weight, the unspoken words between husband and wife carried more meaning than any argument ever had. The events that had begun with petty stubbornness and silent malice now lay bare, their consequences clear, and the couple's hearts had begun the slow, painstaking process of reconciliation and self-reflection. Later, in the sterile quiet of a dimly lit hospital corridor, Ibrahim sat beside Safia's bed, hands clasped tightly, knuckles white, eyes brimming with unshed tears. The soft hum of medical equipment punctuated the silence, each beep a reminder of fragility and second chances. Safia, weak but alert, met his gaze, faintly smiling through the exhaustion and pain, her eyes carrying a mix of forgiveness, understanding, and quiet wisdom. Shadows stretched long across the room, cast by the dim overhead lights and a small lamp beside her bed, accentuating vulnerability and emotional gravity. In the background, Aisha stood silently, watching with hope, relief, and reverent awe, understanding that the moment was bigger than pride, it was the fragile rebirth of connection and trust. Every breath, every subtle movement, was laden with weight. The unspoken words between husband and wife carried more meaning than any argument ever had. The events that had begun with petty stubbornness and silent malice now lay bare, their consequences clear, and the couple's hearts had begun the slow, painstaking process of reconciliation and self-reflection. The village erupted into joy during Safia's baby shower, a kaleidoscope of color, music, and laughter. Decorations swayed gently in the breeze, patterned cloths fluttered, and traditional musicians filled the air with drumming and stringed melodies. Safia, glowing with pregnancy, sat proudly at the center, radiating confidence, warmth, and maternal anticipation. Ibrahim stood closely beside her, protective yet relaxed, eyes soft with laughter and a quiet reverence for the life they had nurtured together. Aisha danced around, capturing moments on her phone, joy and exuberance mirrored in every movement. Elder Malamogo watched from a respectful distance, stick raised in subtle approval, eyes shining with recognition of the lessons learned and harmony restored. The atmosphere was thick with cultural richness, communal love, and the wisdom of shared experience, reinforcing the moral that humility, communication, and reflection could heal even the deepest wounds born of pride and stubbornness. Every laugh, every glance, every drumbeat seemed to weave the village and household together, a living tapestry of renewed life, love, and hope. Night fell softly over the Bello compound, rain whispering against the roof and pooling gently along the earthen paths. Safia and Ibrahim sat wrapped together in a shared blanket on the veranda, gazing at the vast, rain-streaked sky above, the rhythmic sound of drops creating a meditation-like calm. Nearby, their baby, King Rene, slept peacefully, the soft rise and fall of his chest a testament to innocence and renewal. A small hearth flickered nearby, casting warm, comforting shadows that danced across their faces, highlighting expressions of contentment, reflection, and quiet joy. Mist rose from the damp earth, curling like delicate tendrils around the veranda, symbolic of the cleansing of past pride and malice. In this serene tableau, the couple's journey, from petty conflicts to supernatural confrontation, near loss, and heartfelt reconciliation, reached full circle. Their eyes met, not with pride or stubbornness, but with shared wisdom and the gentle knowledge that love, patience, and humility could withstand even the strongest storms. The night seemed to whisper the final lesson, that hearts open to understanding, forgiveness, and courage would always find their way back to peace.